jumping in and then allowing yourself to fail many, many times until you finally succeed. But you don't know you're failing until you jump in.
Meet Roxy Louw, a model, actress, DJ, and the founder of a local lingerie brand.
A grandfather who served in World War II, a father who played for the Springboks. What is it like growing up in a family with like that much legacy? Was there any pressure?
There is always pressure. Living up to my dad's name and even playing hockey. I played provincial hockey. Whenever I was on the field, I could hear them saying, "That's Rob Louw's daughter, watch her, check Rob Louw's daughter." On the day I was born, I was in the newspaper. It was a headline. So I definitely had, I wouldn't say a wobble, but a moment in time where I hit the peak of my career. I had everything that you would call to be successful. I got to that point and I just stood there and I was like, who am I? What do I want? How do I know what I like? Because the media has created this persona of me. Am I this person or am I not? And then I just had to strip away. And for 5 years, I was very focused on tuning in and honing in on who I am. For me, ultimate happiness and ultimate balance is having mind, body, and soul. So having all three stimulated. And then from that, Kaal and the music kind of expressed itself.
What is step one in this process to figure out that you want to live your life according to mind, body, and soul? Roxy, you wear many hats. Is there one that you prefer?
Well, there's one that I'm naturally drawn to, and it's me being in my creative flow. So brand, marketing, it's definitely like the hat that I feel most comfortable wearing.
If someone comes up to you, and we get this a lot about, oh, what do you do? So if someone comes up to you in public and says, hey, Roxy, what do you do? How do you describe yourself?
Gosh, it's always a funny one because sometimes they're anchored in something that they've read or they know about me. It could be DJing, it could be the surfing. So normally it like comes from an angle. Figuring out where and which angle it's coming from is always funny. But I always anchor towards what I'm spending most of my time on at that time, which is at the moment called my business.
Okay. I want to go back to your formative years because, yeah, as mentioned before we started recording, I had a lot of fun understanding where you come from and your heritage. And the first stat is of Dutch ancestry going back to 1658, which is pretty cool. A grandfather who served in World War II, a father who played for the Springboks. What is it like growing up in a family with like that much legacy?
Wow, I'm learning a lot about myself here because I did do my spit test. And what do you call that test that you actually do your DNA? And it's quite fascinating tracking my heritage, like if we want to broaden it out. Because my ancestors traveled all over the show. So some from Russia, some from India, some from Malaysia, some from Kazakhstan. And then we've got the other side as well, which is just crazy because I didn't see any Dutch through that. So it's fascinating that you've pulled Dutch because everywhere else that's come together. But my granddad, he served, amazing man. He was quite strict on my dad, I'm sure of it, because he served. And my dad was just so amazing. He's the most free-spirited, rebellious man in his time. So I grew up with a lot of space and a lot of freedom. There was no rules. We could discover life on our own and kind of come to be rather than being a dictator, if that makes any sense.
Was there any pressure?
There is always pressure, I guess. I mean, living up to my dad's name and even playing hockey. I played provincial hockey. Whenever I was on the field, I could hear them saying, "That's Rob Louw's daughter, watch her, check Rob Louw's daughter." So I could feel the pressure. And I guess that's why I ended up going into surfing because it was so far from that pressure and that pressure. And I feel for my brother because I'm one of 4 kids. We're 3 girls and my brother, and he's got my dad's name. He is Robbie Louw. So there's definitely, there is pressure growing up under him.
Do you know the analogy about you either a product of your environment or in spite of your environment?
Yeah.
And the analogy I like to use is, so if you grow up with an alcoholic dad,
yes,
you either become a product, so you consume alcohol to the point it's a problem, or you never touch alcohol again. Which side do you think you fall on?
Gosh, that's a funny one for me. I think it's a bit of both. Because I'm wondering if I would have lived the same life if my dad wasn't who he is. I've always been very driven. I was exposed to, I guess, things that most kids wouldn't be exposed to from a young age. I think on the day I was born, I was in the newspaper. It was a headline. And I've just naturally fallen into that. But at the same time, I also didn't continue hockey. I didn't follow what you would call the rugby route. And people say this to me a lot. They say, like, you're so lucky because your dad's given you so much opportunity. I'm like, no, this is my work. This is so different. And a lot of rugby players have kids. Where are they? They're not known. So a lot of people automatically think everything is handed to me. But it isn't. I work very hard.
Is there an identity crisis?
No.
Okay.
No. I think it's coming from the liberal family I come from. No. I do learn. I'm a very quick learner. And I do, like even at school, I remember just getting my A's very fast and then I got bored. I have ADHD as well, so it's another reason for all the personalities. I do achieve something, and then as soon as I feel like my bucket is full and I've got that knowledge base, I move on to something else. I just guess my career is in the public eye, so a lot of it gets seen. But that's kind of why I've moved through so many careers. I do believe that we live, like for me, ultimate happiness and ultimate balance is having mind, body, and soul. So having all three stimulated, and obviously the mind for me, I did my yoga teacher training. I've got the surfing. That's the body. The mind, my business, and the soul is music. So I try and bring these elements into my life, which just gives me true happiness, and I feel like I can express from abundance.
So how did this come about? What is step one in this kind of process to figure out that you want to live your life according to mind, body, and soul?
I guess it's just been doing really well in like surfing and having a very successful career in surfing, and then realizing that comes to an end, that time. And I guess the rugby players and sportsmen, there's a time, even though it was maybe prematurely, do you realize, okay, cool, there's a limit to my physical endurance and my physical capabilities. But at the same time, wanting to be stimulated mentally through work, through being challenged in the same way. I feel like it's all the same thing. It's dedication, it's discipline, it's the same recipe from sport applies to being an entrepreneur. And the same with music. And then just discovering music as a form of self-expression and then making a career out of it. I've just realized that it's all works in parallel, but they're just different expressions of me as a person.
It almost seems as if there's no like one thing that you feel. I mean, my question about identity was, a lot of people say they identify with what they do. So if I had to introduce myself, I'd be like, hi, I'm Nathan, I'm an entrepreneur. Or I was an engineer, so I'll be like, oh, I was an engineer. But like, it's difficult to not associate with what you do.
Absolutely,
right?
I hear you.
And actually say, because you're so much more than that.
Yes, absolutely. And we fluctuate in so many ways. Like one day, I don't feel like we're not fixed. Our personalities aren't fixed. We fluctuate depending on our environment, our moods, like what's happening. So to identify with what we're doing is hard, I think, because me specifically, and women are very emotional, so we fluctuate a lot. So it'll be hard to identify specifically. But I guess my identity is merged in these three things that form my expression.
Something I also think about is, if you don't perhaps know who you truly are, then it tends to come from outside in as opposed to inside out. So you're shaped by everything around you, by the people around you,
Absolutely.
as opposed to you truly knowing who you are, what you stand for.
Yeah. So I definitely had, I wouldn't say a wobble, but a moment in time where I hit the peak of my career. I had everything that you would call to be successful. And I got to that point and I just stood there and I was like, who am I? What do I want? What, like, cool, I'm here now, but who am I? And that's the journey I went on when I kind of stripped away and just went back to my roots, went to my basic, integrated with yoga, with my body, my mind, my soul. And through that journey, the expression of my greater expression, which is now my entrepreneurial side, my business and my music, was found through that. But it was going back to what truly makes me happy, what truly moves me. So I think that's also like really important, just to find a moment to connect and to understand, rather than becoming a byproduct of your parents' dreams that they didn't fulfill, or their environment, or what's cool at the time. So that's been quite a journey.
At what point in your journey did you go through that?
I went through that about, I would say, 2017. That's when I reached a point and I was like, wow, what do I like? What makes me happy? How do I know what I like? Because the media has created this persona of me. Am I this person or am I not? And then I just had to strip away. And for 5 years, I was very focused on tuning in and honing in on who I am. And then from that, Kaal and the music kind of expressed itself.
Going a bit back in your journey, when you were signed at 17 for Oakley, did you feel any pressure there to perform?
I think ignorance is bliss in a sense. You know, I was just so grateful to be there, so grateful to travel with them, because I mean, I was 17, I was finishing school, and I was lucky enough to be able to, like, my dad said, okay, cool, the rule is you do well, then you've got freedom to move. So I had the freedom I got my A's, we could go surfing, I could travel as long as I, you know, kept up what I was doing. But it was just amazing, just the opportunity to go over to surf with Oakley, to travel to Brazil, to sit in marketing meetings with the head of Oakley International, and just have that experience, you know, was amazing. But from the pressure side, the first trip, I definitely was like on a mission to get really fit and eat really well. But from that, you know, a chance photo was taken on that trip and ended up becoming the international campaign for, I mean, years to come. And I don't think it really hit me, because I've come from a family that's been exposed to the media. I don't feel like it ever got to me, if that makes any sense.
Got you. And was this a time where your modeling career also started taking off?
Yeah.
While you were surfing?
Yes. So I was in Brazil. We ended up, actually, it wasn't even part of the shoot, because we were shooting and surfing. And I just went off with the photographer, asked him to show me the local fruit of the region, because I love fruit. I had read up on a bit of fruit. And then we were on the beach buggy, and he just snapped a picture, and it became like this crazy billboard. And yeah, it was just crazy. It's amazing looking back now.
Wow. And at that point, what did you want to do full time?
At that time, I wanted to surf. And modeling was just great, because I got to go to like the most amazing countries, surf and model at the same time. So I had this ticket to the world, which was really cool.
And that experience, I mean, we see things from the outside, right? But truly being in that industry, for example, modeling, what don't many people know about the behind the scenes?
Yeah, modeling is it's a really hard industry. I wouldn't recommend anyone to just dive in there. Obviously, with the future of AI and everything, it's a bit tricky, as it's going to always evolve. But it's a really hard space to be. You're dealing with rejection on a daily basis. So people don't know. You go to a casting, there's maybe 2,000 faces lined up, and you're being rejected over and over and over and over. And maybe after a year, you might get a job. So it really toughens you up. A lot of the models are very insecure because of this. And I think it's great. It's amazing if you're strong-minded and you have something alongside it. But yeah, I think it looks all glitz and glams. People don't realize it's really not the most easiest job.
And it's also very outward-facing. I mean, I can imagine it's not a Miss South Africa campaign where they're asking you all these different type of questions.
Yeah.
About who you are on the inside. It's very much how good are you in front of camera.
Absolutely. And it's very external. So you're just like seen as this picture. depending on if you're going to, take your career further. And it's different now because now the likes of social media, you get to express other sides of yourself. But it becomes very image orientated, and that's where, eating disorders come through, and girls just get very insecure. So it's a hard industry.
Do you think that that's what it takes to actually make it?
I mean, thank goodness the times have changed. But back in the day, you had to weigh you have to be a certain size, and you have to lose so many kilos for a shoot. And it's definitely changed a lot. I wouldn't say that's what it takes, but I guess there was a sense of an eating disorder because you had to fit a frame and fit a sample size. So it's basically the brief for the job. And it's hard. It's really tough.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think that a lot of people would get into it with perhaps not having the reason why behind doing it. And yeah, I think that's a big challenge. And acting, where did that fall in?
So the acting stepped in, let me think, when it started off the back of FHM 106 years. So I was very lucky with my career in modeling because I had the surfing as it was tied in nicely together. So I was never really, and I think maybe I broke the mold at the time, never the skinny girl. I never had that much pressure to be this perfect frame because I'm an athlete. So from that, after winning FHM 160th, doing Sports Illustrated back in the day, used to come out in the magazine. We would do a swimwear edition. I got asked to cast for Blue Crush 2, and yeah, I did quite well, and I ended up being cast as Acapulco Goldie, one of the main characters in the film, and it was amazing. Spent 2 months on the road, just surfing and filming. It was quite fun.
Was there any challenge for you to, take off the modeling hat and now wear the actress hat? Was there kind of like a transition?
Yeah, there was. I feel more natural on camera anyway, even though I've had such a strong career in the modeling side of things. But it was challenging, but I don't think it was that much more challenging because it's always kind of worked hand in hand. There's always been a commercial element, and then the photos and stills at the same time. But it was cool. It was really fun.
I know firsthand how overwhelming it can be to start and grow a podcast from scratch. From figuring out your show's concept, deciding between audio or video, learning how to record and edit, to wondering how you'll stand out in a sea of other podcasters out there. That's why I'm super excited to share that I've teamed up with Latitude Podcast Studio and podcast coach and industry pro, Shaun Lutz. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your podcast to the next level, Shaun has the tools and experience to help you get there. Head over to ShaunLutz.com to book your free call today and make sure you tell Shaun that the African CEO sent you. Back to the episode. So coming now back to the point in which you had this realization, was this more or less the time in which you were acting and, modeling?
Yeah.
For you to then have this moment in your career where you're like, flip, what's next?
I got asked to do a commercial for the Super Bowl. At the time, I was in New Zealand for a wedding, and it didn't happen. I didn't end up going because I was already at this wedding, and just to get all the way through to the States at the time wasn't going to happen. And then after that, I think I just reflected on that, and it just hit me one day that I just like, what next? And I guess that was the question that just like unraveled so many other questions at the same time.
What is step one in that process? Like someone that's going through something very similar, doesn't know what their next move is. What's step one?
Step one, so for me, when I'm in a position where I'm like a bit shook up and I don't know where to go and I'm just like, okay, what next? That's when I just go quiet and I tune in. So that's what I did. I started going to yoga every day, discovered yoga at the time, and just started trying to connect to my truth to figure out which step to do next rather than just reactively jumping onto the next thing because the train's moving, just keep going with it. So I guess it was just like pausing and pulling back.
How challenging is that for you to do, knowing and, you have ADHD?
Oh, that was really hard. But that's kind of, at the time I didn't know I had ADHD. I only figured that out later. But I realized like obviously with the yoga, that it was really helping me. So that down the line figured out ADHD, and the yoga was helping with the ADHD. And maybe that's what started slowing me down for that time being.
It sounds like a very self-reflective process. And I feel like, we're not taught the tools from a young age. And therefore we get to our, 30s, midlife, 40s for some people. And then it's like, oh, who am I?
Exactly.
And have I just been doing this thing because I've been told that this is what success looks like?
Absolutely. And like, why am I even doing this job? Is it because my dad was a lawyer? Or is it something they wanted of me? And it's just like, you just start asking all these questions, and so it's just stepping back and going, wow, okay, let me figure out what makes me truly happy, and then moving from that point, because it's quite interesting.
Do you feel like we get to a point and then things are okay?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are happy. They just continue. They don't reflect. And it's easy, but I just think I've got so many layers of depth. I don't know if anyone goes through this, but it's an interesting place to be.
So the context of that question was, so for me specifically, I feel like, I'm building this business out now.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm doing it is because of this impact I want to make, and I want people to be inspired and educated so that they can live their best life.
Yes.
But also want to achieve financial freedom while doing it.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
It's like those are some of the reasons why I'm doing things.
Yes.
And at the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get to a place where those things are achieved. And then what? What's next? So I guess the question is, do we arrive, or should the focus be placed on the day-to-day?
That's a tricky one. I guess the day-to-day. I focus on the day-to-day. I don't think it was me. I've never a goal set. So that I don't work from goals backwards. I kind of work forwards, and I move by instinct. But obviously goal setting is really important when it gets to business. But up until that point, I had kind of just been moving and going with it rather than setting out the goals of where I wanted to end up. And it's been great. I just paused and went, what do I do next? And at that time, I just had to stop to move to where I am now. So I don't know. Maybe there's more after that for you. Maybe it's the TV show. But you won't know until you get there. So it's hard to sometimes goal set because you've got this vision and it isn't as grand, or you might be pivoting in a different direction, and then living up to that expectation can sometimes be quite challenging on its own. I think it's just every individual case is different.
Do you ever struggle with balance, or finding the harmony between personal and professional life?
I've been very lucky that my personal life kind of rolls into my professional life. Do you mean personal life being relationship, or do you mean exercising, keeping my health up to?
Yeah, so personal can be relationships, health, relationships, not just romantic, but friendships, family. And then, of course, on the other side is, the craft and what you're doing from a monetary point of view.
Yes. So the last year specifically, my business has really needed a lot of my time, and I had to step away from the social life other than my gigs. And we actually my husband and I moved remotely just to not be so distracted by the noise of the city, just to put our heads down for a year and just focus purely on business, which is hard because, our social life couldn't be kept up. Family is easy because, we were close to my family, and I feel like the more I step away, the closer I am to my family. But I've always managed to balance it out. To be honest, the same year of the business, I've also hit hyper growth in this year. It's terrible. It's hard to, you're waking up, you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with your team, you're dealing with your team offshore. It's hard for me, it was hard to close the books and go for a run and then continue again, just because I was in flow states. I'm finding a balance now. I've managed to delegate quite a bit of my tasks, so just to integrate with balancing my lifestyle a bit better.
How challenging was it to delegate?
So hard. That has been the hardest the hardest challenge, but we're getting there.
Why do you think it's so hard?
I think we have a way that we work, and a lot of it is like in our head. And I'm not a very system and operations person. It's just easy for me to move and do things rather than take the time to train someone to eventually give us more space and more time. So it was just shifting my to-dos and how I process my time into systems and operations, and then being able to train someone to take that over. But I think it's just been so busy that I haven't had the time to do that. I've just been moving from fire to fire to fire to fire, with Kaal being a startup.
Yeah, can relate to that.
Yeah.
But is there part of you that feels like you can do the job better?
Oh, absolutely. But I guess that's part of the job, and this has been the hard part, is realizing that you can train someone to do the job even better, because that is all they're doing, instead of you half doing everything.
The mindset shift for me was working on the business as opposed to working in the business. If you work in the business, you're going to grow this way.
Yeah.
If you work on the business, you're going to grow this way.
Yeah. It's like being a leader, you need to create space, not fill the space.
Yeah, that's well said.
It's been a process. I think it'll always be a ever learning, because there's even more stuff. I thought I delegated most of my in the business tasks, and then today I was like, oh, why am I still doing this? Or why am I still doing this? So it's just like slowly moving things off my to-do list.
Something that also changed my mindset was Tim Ferriss's kind of quadrants about eliminate, delegate, automate, or delete. I feel like that was so helpful. Like, it's a timeless principle. Like, he wrote the book in the early 2000s.
Absolutely.
And this principle still apply.
Absolutely. And like automation, we don't realize how amazing, how much time automation can create within our business and within our, it's amazing. I don't think a lot of people realize that.
How did you get into DJing?
Well, so DJing, I did a little bit of DJing when I was with FHM 2009. I'll do DJ battles with Tracy McGregor, and we'll just have 30 minutes on the decks. I wasn't mixing like I am now. It was more just for show, CDs in, choose your top 30 songs, cue, play, fade in, fade out. And then during lockdown, I obviously had time on my hands. And I've always used music as a form of, let's say, escapism, a form of connection. And during lockdown, the first thing I did was I leaned into the music. And at the time, I was like, cool, I need to get decks so I can start playing again. And yeah, my career was born out of lockdown again.
Interesting. And from there, how did you actually get your first gig?
I recorded a set and I put it onto SoundCloud. I didn't expect a response, and I got quite a few messages from people saying, wow, this was amazing. Why were you playing? And I was like, okay, well, because, everyone has imposter syndrome. I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing this for fun. And I put it onto my Instagram, and someone messaged through and said, do you want to play? And I remember that first gig. I asked them if I can come in at like 10 o'clock. And I played my set from 10 o'clock all the way through until I had to play over and over and over and over. Just practice on the bigger gear, on the bigger sound system. And yeah, I just kind of sprung from there. After that gig, I booked more and more and more, and until I am like where I am now.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when you got asked to play that first gig?
I was just like, do I know what I'm doing? Do I know how to mix? Can I play? I'm just playing for myself. Obviously, I like what it sounds like. Do other people like what it sounds like? Yeah, I guess that's what a lot of people go through. I think with all careers.
Is there a feeling of not being good enough?
Yes. I am an overachiever. I don't look at if I write an exam, I don't look at the 90%. I look at that 10% I do wrong if I'm getting 90%. So I guess it's like focusing on the negative rather than the positive. But I guess it's just realizing that moving off the feedback was great, because once I got that feedback from my first gig, I could pivot from there and just feel it, and then kind of come to learn my music.
And I think about internally, how do you get over imposter syndrome, right? Because of course it's the internal narrative. You're telling yourself, or you're focusing on the 10% as opposed to the 90%. You know, is there like a practice you can do without receiving that feedback for you to actually just get into action?
Yes. So for me, I mean, everything you do, I even remember when I launched Kaal, I was like, and I actually read this book. I was like 13 years old. It's called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And what I remember reading within that book was you don't put your toe in the water, you jump in. If you're going to go in, jump in. And I try and use that through my life, and I've been using it. And when you jump in and you get negative feedback, I mean, actually, if I step back to my actual first gig, it wasn't actually that club, but I stepped on, there were decks at a house party, and none of the music was formatted. So it was like an absolute mess. I plugged it into the turntables thinking I was going to play, and it wasn't formatted to record box, and it just went, and I was like, okay, bye. And then I jumped off the decks. But I learned so much through that, would you say, that mess. But I jumped in, and I guess it's just jumping in and then allowing yourself to fail many, many times until you finally succeed. But you don't know you're failing until you jump in. So like it's just that jumping into
100%.
the water.
Those are wise words. Just do it. I think
do
sometimes we also get in our own way by overthinking what could go wrong as opposed to like what's it based on. You know, when I know that for myself, if I overthink about something, I get better at catching myself. Because then I ask myself, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And what's the facts?
Yes.
And the facts don't align with the things that I'm telling myself.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just going for it.
Yeah.
I think it really helps when you get out of your own way. The idea for Kaal.
Yes.
So where did that come from?
So I've always wanted to create a brand that was empowering for women. And there's nothing more empowering than putting on lingerie because you're doing it for yourself. You're feeling like you're giving yourself self-love through nice lingerie, even though it's for no one else. And Kaal started a bit more broader than the lingerie. There was swimwear lingerie, or there is swimwear lingerie. We did jackets. I did like the whole lot. And then I tested the market, and I just felt once I got in and I validated the concept that the lingerie seemed to have been what was received best, and it was my best expression.
And actually getting from that idea to, you know, pulling the trigger and, you know, sourcing your material, what is that process like?
It's a process. It takes a lot of, like I would say, patience, understanding where we're going, and then getting the right teams in place to help make everything come to life. So I started very small, and then I first had to validate what I was doing. Otherwise, you know, you can't just go to market without validation. Once I validated it,
How did you validate it?
I validated it by just testing the market initially. So I launched like a few pieces across a broad range of styles, I would say. And then once it went to market, the response from the clients, whatever they were purchasing, was kind of where, you know, the concentration lied. And that's kind of where I started honing in on what I'm doing right now.
Got you. And do you design yourself?
No, I've got a team, though, that we work with that designs according to what the market needs at certain times.
What skills did you have to upskill on and learn?
Wow. I guess you wear all the hats in business, right? So I've always been an entrepreneur. It's always been like a part of me, and I guess a bit of a jack of all trades. But the biggest skill I've had to learn, I would say, is implementing systems and operations into my business because it's not so much a skill, but it's a mindset shift.
To think about the product as an entire business and not just a product.
Yes.
And do you source it locally, like the material?
It's so hard. So this is one of the biggest challenges of the business. We're a local brand, but the manufacturing capabilities in South Africa isn't there for underwire nor for finer detail. So to deliver the product that I have to deliver at this stage, I can't do it locally. Although the company is a local brand, everyone is here. Everything's being built from here. We're just not there on the like where the international is in terms of the detail that you get in the lingerie.
Does that pose more challenges to be able to, to not be able to source your products locally and perhaps go to the factory yourself?
Absolutely, it is challenging. The goal is to essentially build the manufacturing capabilities to do it locally, and it's a big dream, but it is hard. I can't go and actually feel the fabrics. I mean, I do sampling. Samples come here, we do it, and then we send it. But it's a process. It's a timely process. And being a local brand, being Kaal, Kaal's the most South African word. I want to support the locals because we used to be amazing. Our manufacturing, Woodstock used to be the strip for textiles, but the machinery is just not here. So that is our long-term vision.
Got you. And how do you think about marketing and, the strategy that you implement? Could you walk us through your overarching strategy?
Well, it's a tricky one. Obviously, marketing kind of shifts by season. So I try and decide on the next 3 months, the next quarter, what am I going to do? What is the vision? What are people feeling? Where are their heads at the time? And where do we want them to be? And then it's kind of a journey, taking the customers from not ready to buy to taking them on a journey to understand, cool, I don't know why lingerie is beneficial, I'm not ready to buy, and then taking them through the journey and letting them understand how lingerie helps and impacts your life, and then essentially taking them through that customer journey until they're ready to buy or they become familiar with the brand and they understand the brand.
Okay, and all of this is through social media?
Through social media, through paid ads, through most of the marketing channels.
I think something not a lot of people speak about is your repeat customer.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you just market for repeat customers? Is there separate campaigns that you run?
No, so we're very lucky. We've got amazing repeat customers. Our customers are very happy. So a lot of our sales are repeat customers. You've got email marketing campaigns that go out, so they all join the community, and then, email marketing is amazing.
And in terms of growth, how are you thinking about scaling?
Mm-hmm. So at the moment, scaling, we're in scale state, and it's just scaling up on the marketing. Once the marketing scales up, everything else just folds with it. We are looking at branching more into the international market. It's just really getting the infrastructure right in every city that we want to go into to be able to deliver in the timely manner. So that's the biggest challenge right now. But scaling, we're in scale state. It's just more delegation, more operations, more systems.
How challenging is it to go cross border?
It's a challenge. We're international. We've had lots of sales international, but to do it on the operational scale that we're doing here it's a challenge, but we'll get through it.
What are some of the things that you need to be thinking about?
Getting shop there, getting storefront, so that we've got brand visibility, building brand like we have here, and then obviously like the investment of spending the time, getting the team on that side so they can deliver within 1 to 3 days like we do within South Africa.
Local partners. Yeah, and distribution.
And brand awareness, it's another big one. So it's a whole separate campaign. Obviously, the marketing campaign in South Africa is the marketing campaign in South Africa, but jumping into the German market, for example, it's a whole different mindset. So just getting into the heads there and having the distribution and the visibility,
Interesting. So now you're thinking about the different cultures and what pushes them over the line to buy based on where they're at.
Yeah.
Language,
the styles even, whether there's a unique style or a unique range just for a different market. So there's quite a few hurdles to jump over.
Is there an end goal in mind?
There is, yes. There's definitely an end goal. I would love to. So I'm going to step back because I'm jumping to the international play, but the goal is to be in all the cities. We want to be in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban. We want to be able to cater to all our clientele and have storefront. The end goal would be to do that in a couple of major cities. So have storefront and distribution in the States and in Europe as well, and then Australia and New Zealand.
And from a e-commerce to, in-person retail point of view, what challenges have you noticed on that side?
Wow, it has been quite challenging, to be honest. E-commerce is easy to manage because of fulfillment and stock management, but when it gets to retail, it becomes quite challenging to do fulfillment and stock management across stores. So that's another thing that we're really struggling with. You would think that there's plugins that could help with stock management, but none of it's up to the task, to be honest.
And from a capital point of view, to be able to perhaps lease out, buildings, has that also been a challenge as you scale and grow?
So at the moment, I haven't taken on any investment. We've been offered investment, but I've just kind of been running it out of my own pocket and feeding it back in. So I guess it's also the mindset shift. Once you allow investment in, then I'm somehow reporting to someone, which is not where I want to be. So I'm just growing really slowly and sustainably. And we'll get there, but it's a slow process.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a lot of companies that would scale too quickly because of excess. They've perhaps got investment, maybe it's venture capital, and not enough solid systems in place and solid local partners.
With the right partner, it's great. But I guess I've also seen a lot of companies get into this trap. So the entrepreneurs are building businesses. They're getting investments. They're losing over their 50% of their shares, and then they're owned. And then all they're doing is just working to exit. I just don't want to get caught in that trap because it's built from it's a good place. It's built from a good place, and it's growing so nicely.
And I heard you speak about you identifying as being a creative.
Yes.
Is that, what challenges come with that?
Being a creative is amazing. I'm an ideas person. I've got a lot of ideas, very visionary. But when it gets to, I guess, the operations and the implementation is always quite tricky. So it's just, and I've figured this out over time, is how to get a doer to help do while I can create and think.
Yeah, the CEO, COO relationship.
Absolutely, it's the best.
Yeah, I guess the challenge, of course, is, what you're describing. But of course, on the benefit side of things, it's you can see things, 10 steps ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think finding people to complement you, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, getting the right team that complements me, that understands the chaos of also, I'll have this idea and all of a sudden something hits me and I'm like, okay, everyone drop it. Drop everything you're doing. This is how it's going to work. And then watching that come into play. But I guess it's hard because, if you've got your ways of working and these are your time slots and this is what you're going to do in these hours, and then CEO's like, drop it all. This is a great idea. But at the end of the day, it just all works really nicely together because...
Yeah, that's probably the worst thing you could do to your team.
Yeah.
I think some people like working with systems in place, but then also having things in advance, like a simple example could be content creation.
Yes.
If now you have batch created content for the month and then now you have this idea that needs to go out next week, that can be a problem.
Yeah.
How do you think about hiring?
Hiring's great. I feel like you always got to be hiring in a business, always interviewing.
And what's your process like for hiring?
LinkedIn's been great. I know they've changed their ways now. I've also really lucky because I've got my network on Instagram. I've got quite a big following. So if I have a job spec, I can just pop it out on Instagram and I get quite a few applicants. So it's definitely been easier maybe for me having my network.
In terms of traits, what do you look for? And the reason why, because the past couple of months I've really been focused on the hiring part and ensuring that the entire process is quite rigorous, I think that's the word, because, you can't let a B player into your team, especially if you're in a grow and, you have these ambitious goals to grow.
Yes, absolutely.
Someone who's just coming in there for a 9-to-5 mentality.
Absolutely.
I think
You need someone that's going to have your back, that's going to grow with you, that can also kind of carry on their own. You don't have to micromanage. I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Also puts them in a good place to, they feel confident enough to move with you. It's a tricky one. I think it's just a process. Like I always, when we put out a job application, like a job spec, having some questions and you know what answers you want to get from this person, and just making sure they answer it. If they don't answer it correctly, then, you know, it kind of filters out quite a few of the people.
Questions not related to the job?
It could be related
Okay.
to the job. It could not. It could be how would you handle the situation. So when they're applying for the job, they'll answer it in such a manner that you'll actually filter out quite a lot of people.
In this season of your life, what drives you?
What drives me? I want to start a family at some point, and I like nice things. I like a nice lifestyle. I like the idea that my brand can empower other women to start businesses, to start working, start creating their dream. I just want to empower women to realize that they can reach their full potential and they can do something rather than, you know, just settling. So it's a combination of the ripple effect of hopefully empowering other women and having a nice place, having a family.
Yeah, I think that last part is so important. Significant, should I say. Roxy, this has been amazing. Thank you for the insights. The last part of the podcast is called the fast fire. So I'm going to ask you these quick questions, and if you could answer in a word or short sentence, that would be amazing. What's a contrarian truth that you believe to be true? You know, not many people would agree with you on this.
How you do anything is how you do everything. I believe that the small things you do and your behavioral traits and the smaller things is how you are in the bigger things. So just do things properly if you want to do things properly. I don't know how to explain it.
No. Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's actually one of my value principles in the company. The way we do one thing is the way we do everything.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I actually agree with you on that one. What's one rule that you would make that everyone has to follow?
Discipline. Get up and put the hours in. Because if you keep doing the hours, it's going to click at some point if you put the hours in.
I like that. Consistency. What's one thing you would say to 20-year-old Roxy right now?
Oh, wow. Buy some Bitcoin.
That's wise words. Imagine you're standing on a stage in front of 60 million people. So some could be there, some could be in person, but 60 million. And you've got 3 pieces of wisdom to leave them with. What are they?
Wow. Be your authentic self. Find your authentic self and express from that. And do it. Jump in the water. Whatever you're wanting to do, whatever you're thinking about, do it. Time is so short. You've got to live your life and be present through your journeys. Whatever you're doing, we get so caught in our head, either stressing about the future or worrying about the past. Just being present is so hard. It's like living in every moment that is given to you.
Amazing. Thank you. Roxy, thank you. This was amazing. Thank you for sharing your journey with us and the insights.
That was great.
And I look forward to what's coming with Kaal.
Thank you so much.